If you were lucky enough to grow up in the 80s or the 90s, you'll know that a lot of the toys that we had went on to become the most iconic toys of all time. Some were big, some were medium size, and some were miniature. And in my opinion, none of them captured the magic or the memories like the ones that fit inside your pocket. Now, when I was a kid, miniature figures like these were all the rage. They were like Pokemon cards and Pogs before Pokemon cards and Pogs. People could collect them and trade them. We could hide them in our pockets and then sneak them to school back when we were told that we weren't allowed to take toys out with us. Kids like to do little sneaky rebellious things like that, and these gave us the ability to do it. So I'm not going to go into all the history of where minifigures come from, who created the very first ones or anything like that. I'm just going to tell you about the first ones that I ever got my hands on. So if I had to think back, what were the first ever minifigures that I ever got? They'd have to be the M.U.S.C.L.E. Now, like a lot of the toys that I love, M.U.S.C.L.E originally came from Japan. They were all characters from a 1978 comic called Kinnikuman Man. This eventually spawned its own cartoon and mini Keshi series. The name Keshi comes from the word Keshigomu, and that's what they call minifigures in Japan. So if you ever hear anybody refer to minifigures as Keshi, now you know why. Now, back in Japan, all these individual characters had names and personalities, and there was a story that revolved around them all. But in 1986, when America got hold of them, they pretty much retconned all the names, all the backstories, and they brought them over to America and just called them M.U.S.C.L.E. M.U.S.C.L.E was an acronym for Millions of Unusual Strange Creatures Lurking Everywhere. And if you had any of these growing up, then your parents can probably testify to this. These things used to get lost all over the house, down the side of the settee, down the side of the bed, underneath the fridge, underneath the washing machine. It actually pains me to think how many of these got thrown in the garbage when parents were tidying up. Now, these were a massive hit when they came out, and I don't know what it is that made them so appealing. They came in single colour plastics with no paint applications, but if I ever saw some of these at the car boot, I would get gassed and beg my parents to buy me them. Maybe it's the fact that they're all so unique that no two of them are the same. Maybe it's the Japanese factor that I wouldn't realise until years later that I was such a fan of. But when you take a minute to look at how crazy and unique these designs are, I think it's pretty self-explanatory why these are one of the most popular minifigures of all time. 1986 was definitely a wicked year for minifigures, because we also got my favourite minifigure series of all time, the Battle Beasts. The Battle Beasts were sick little anthropomorphic robot cyborg animal warriors. Now, I'm going to get into the history of these and do a whole video on them another time, so I'm not going to concentrate on them too much today, but I just wanted to make a note that this was around the time when so many cool little minifigures were coming out. Now, although these are really different to M.U.S.C.L.E, they've got full painted applications, they've got articulated arms and they hold weapons, I still like to give them a mention. They're still very important if we're talking about minifigures in general. So if we jump forward to the early 90s, there's one line of minifigures that we all had. These stand out more than any of them, and they're called Monster in My Pocket. If there's one line that's a symbol of 90s minifigures, it's definitely these guys. In school, every single person that I knew had pockets full of these, and they featured so many dope characters, ones that were really recognisable from Universal monsters, like Frankenstein, and the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and the Phantom of the Opera. But then they'd also feature more obscure ones like the Baba Yaga, the Stone Golem, or the Hindu demon Kali. So you was actually supposed to play some kind of game with them. Two kids would take a pile of Monster in My Pockets, you turn them round, and whoever has the highest number on their back wins the round. But to be honest, we just collected them, we fought with them, and we fucking loved them. Now, I do often say that certain toys have been a part of my life as long as my hands and my feet have, and there's few toys that are as familiar to me as Monster in My Pockets are. So by this point, companies couldn't sell enough minifigures, and when the creators of the Bogglings saw how well they were doing, they wanted a piece of the action as well, so they created their own mini Boggling series. Now, mini Bogglings came in two different sizes, and the bigger ones were made from a kind of rubber that was like no other Keshi before them. Although it was squishy and durable, it was also pretty heavy, so you threw one of these at your sister's head and it was an instant KO. And the whole thing with Bogglings is that they were like these horrible little creatures that would climb out of swamps and climb through a sewage system into your house, and then they'd fuck up your kitchen and mash up your bedroom and cause terror in your house. They were like gremlins or critters. Each one had his own character. Each one had his own thing. I was lucky enough to speak to the creator of the Bogglings, Tim Clark, at ToyCon last year. And although the interview never came out because I fucked up the audio on it, so I could never bring it out, I did get to ask him about the mini Bogglings, and he said that when they were creating them, they had like very little to no boundaries as to what they could and couldn't sculpt. So him and his team were just creating the maddest shit. He said the ones where they were getting pissed, the ones where they were committing suicide, putting guns to the head. For a kid's toy, it's just something you just never get away with now. But he knew that at the time they had something special, something controversial, and something fucking awesome. Check this fucking guy, he's committing suicide, he's putting a gun to his head, he's ready to blow his boggling brains out. Look at this greedy get, he's trying to yam a whole pizza in one, he's trying to put the whole pizza in his mouth. Check this guy, Rocky Boggling. Check this dude, he's a sushi chef, he's gonna prepare some sushi. Would you eat sushi made by a boggling? I don't reckon I would. Couple classics right here. Beach bum style. In the 90s, beach bum style was big. I remember going to beach bum parties when I was a kid, where you had to dress up like a beach bum, like a surfer dude. Look at this, we got like a spooky spook ghost with a ball and chain. Woo! This guy is mash up his face with an ice cream. What do you know about this dude? Just fucking about with his own brain. He's just opened up his own skull and started showing people. Oh, bleh, look at this guy, he's been sick. He must have ate some of the sushi by the Boggling sushi chef. Also, one of the things that's fucking awesome about Bogglings is that Tim Clark is still creating them to this day. Check out this one that he made recently, the King Boggling, and it's squishy. I think overall it's the sculpting that really gives these guys character. You can just see where the dudes were prodding at them and poking at them with sculpting tools. They're not smoothed off, they're very crude, they're very rough and ready, but that's what gives them character, and they're just so reminiscent of that 80s, 90s gross out era. So a little bit of time after this, Konami, the creators of Monster in My Pocket, decided to step things up a little bit and start adding a little bit of colour to their designs. And they came out with the Monster in My Pocket Super Scaries. And when I first saw these as a kid, I was like, what the fuck? They were quite a bit bigger than normal Monster in My Pockets. And as soon as I saw them, obviously I fell in love. I was a fucked up little kid. I liked fucked up shit. And I wanted me some Super Scaries. This guy was fucking awesome. He looked like some H.P. Lovecraft tentacle sea monster. This dude was dope as well. He had a long tongue like Venom, and he looked like he'd just smashed through a TV or a picture frame, and he still had half of the wood hanging off his neck. Some of them were mad neon colours that never really photograph or video too well. You have to see them in person to really see how much they pop. Some of them are glow in the dark, but this guy's definitely my favourite. Check this dude. He's got all pipes coming out of his arms and his back, and he's got a gas mask on his face, and gas masks are fucking awesome. The next wave from Monster in My Pocket was the Super Creepies line. These were based on bugs and creepy crawlies, insects, arachnids, that kind of thing. And they were mashed up with animals and machine parts. Not long after that, they came out with the Monster in My Pocket dinosaurs, jumping on that Jurassic Park hype that was so big at the time. Everything revolved around Jurassic Park in the mid-90s, and Monster in My Pockets was no exception. So these ones were prehistoric animals and Ice Age creatures. They also released some in colour variants that you dipped in water and you could see skeletons and fossils on the skin. Fucking dope. And they all came in those classic 90s neon colours. Like I said, they don't photograph and video too well. You have to see them in person, but they really fucking pop. And whenever I see these kind of neon colours, it's so reminiscent of those 90s toys. Shortly after these though were my favourite release from Monster in My Pockets. Check these guys, the Monster in My Pockets aliens. You'd get these in blind bags and I couldn't wait to fucking open them up and see what was inside. I remember we was in town when I first got some of these, and my mum said, yeah, you can get a couple, and if they're good, I'll buy you some more. And when I opened them up and she saw how cool they were, even she was gassed. She was like, oh, you can definitely have some more. They were proper 90s alien punk style. They had guns, weapons and machines forged to their arms and their appendages, replacing their hands and shit. They look like something from the Sega game Alien Storm or from a 2000 AD comic, and as a kid I couldn't get enough of them. They were also a bit like the Battle Beasts. They had little rub features. This was technology in the 90s and the 80s which was really fucking popular in toys, where you'd rub them and they'd reveal a little secret message. Check it, these guys are part of the Skull Army. This guy's repping the Blade Gang. At the time, I fucking loved them, and to me, they're still probably my favourite release from Monster in My Pockets. I love all the classic Universal Monsters stuff, but it was also wicked to see them jump forward and do that sci-fi space mutant shit. These were another line that came out around the same time, and the majority of these characters were also on that wicked space mutant shit. They're called the Trash Bag Bunch. These dudes came in bags that you would dissolve in water, revealing the character inside, and when I found these as a kid, I was so fucking gash you would not believe. By this point, most of the minifigures were made from hard plastic, not rubber anymore, so these went perfectly with the Monster in My Pocket aliens, even though they had way better colour applications. I always loved this dude on tank tracks. I love characters on tank tracks anyway, but this guy was like a Johnny Five juggernaut, but he had skull shoulder pads, and skull shoulder pads are fucking dope. They were also very random, like they was not even from the same toy line, a lot of them. Check this dude, he's like a weird back alley mutant melted skeleton pirate with a baseball bat and a shield made from a trash can lid. You've got this weird red gargoyle dude with a steel pipe in his hand. This dude has a stand on his feet for some reason. None of the other figures needed stands, but this one did. It's almost like they just found a random toy and were like, oh yeah, let's cast that up with them as well. But when it comes to lesser known minifigure lines, these guys just knocked it out of the ballpark for me, and in my opinion, they're easily, without doubt, one of the best minifigure lines ever. Now, whenever I'm talking about aliens minifigures, I always have to give these guys a mention. These are cosmic aliens, aka pet aliens. Now, these came out in a time in the 90s when it was still pretty funny to troll pop culture. So a lot of the character are takes on or poking fun at things that were popular at the time. So, for example, this one looks like E.T. This one's a take on a xenomorph, but it's got a stop sign like a lollipop lady. This one looks like Sonic the Hedgehog. They all look like aliens that had come to Earth to visit and then were like dressing up in disguises and trying to blend in. Look at this weird kissy TV one. Weird. It makes you think, like, what the fuck were these dudes on when they were coming up with these crazy ideas, but I love it. Now, the next guys to come out from Monster in My Pockets were these dudes, Monster in My Pocket wrestlers. At the time, wrestling was fucking awesome, and like all the popular culture at the time, Monster in My Pockets did their own version of it. I remember seeing these for the first time on the newsstand, and I was like, wow, that artwork is so fucking dope. They were like classic monster takes on WWE wrestling gimmicks. Like, this dude's a cannibal. This guy's like a headhunter with a shrunken head in his hand. This guy's a hangman. Check this doctor dude, looks like he's gonna perform surgery on someone mid-match. And although you could buy these guys in shops, they were also part of a breakfast cereal promotion. So it wasn't uncommon for kitchen cupboards to be filled with random half-eaten breakfast cereals that kids had begged the parents to buy them just because they wanted the free wrestling toy. One of the final lines that I want to show you today is, again, another one that I'm going to do a whole episode on at a later date. They were released by Matchbox and they were called Z.Bots. And honest to God, out of all the toys that I loved as a kid, nothing came close to my Z.Bots. These little dudes were different to most other minifigures. They had wicked paint apps, they were fully articulated. As a kid, I was so obsessed with robots and cyborgs and space shit, and these just fucking did it for me. No word of a lie, this little dude with a black helmet and a yellow visor and a 3-barrel gun was honestly, as a kid, one of my most prized possessions in the whole fucking world. There's not many times that I remember hugging my dad growing up, but one of the times that I do remember is when he found this Z-Bot at work and he brought it home for me. At the time, I only had a few that we'd found at car boots. I loved them so much, and when I saw him come home with it in his hand, it made me so fucking happy. Now, like I said, I am going to cover these much better in another episode at another time, but I wanted to mention them today because not only are they one of my favourite minifigures, in my opinion, after these came out, everything changed. As we got into the 2000s, minifigures, in my opinion, really started to go downhill. The designs looked less like monsters that would rip your head off and terrorise your family, and more like something that would tell you a dorky, stupid joke. And apart from the few exceptions like Gormite, minifigures seemed to go in a direction that took everything away from what I loved about them. It's now been multiple decades since all these figures were released. It also means that the kids that were playing with them are now all grown up themselves. And some of those people that grew up loving this shit like I did are now toy collectors and toy designers in the toy industry. And now all of those people, through a pure collective love of this shit, have been able to bring so much of it back. Super 7 have released multiple brand new releases of M.U.S.C.L.E figures, from Aliens and Street Fighter to Lucha Legends and He-Man. Mattel are releasing WWE and Street Sharks M.U.S.C.L.E figures. Mad mashup crossovers that we would have never got as a kid. Tim Clark is still releasing Bogglings. You got crazy independent toy designers like Last Resort Toys bringing out fucking huge scale trash bag bunch monsters. You got George Gaspar bringing out the OMFG series. And an array of independent toy designers all bringing out their own minifigures and Keshi. What started out as just kids playing with these figures for fun has now turned into a whole subculture of people that collect and love and celebrate this shit. And it's all because when we were kids, we loved our robots, our wrestlers, our mutants, and our monsters. And for me personally, I love this shit now more than ever. So the next time that you're tidying up and you find one of your kids' little toys, please don't just throw it away. Put it somewhere safe. Because you never know how much that little toy could mean to them one day. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on Instagram, and if you want to help make Slimehouse bigger and better than ever, then you can also consider being an absolute legend and subscribing to our Patreon. Once again, thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Slimehouse TV.